Hey everybody, how y'all doing? This is Valencia Gunder. Most folks just call me V, and I am based here in Miami, Florida, and I serve you all as the national co-lead of the Black Hive and the Movement for Black Lives. I am super excited to reintroduce to you all InfraBL's Climate and Environmental Justice Squad. We've been doing some amazing work. I'm quite sure many of you all may remember InfraBL launching the Red, Black, and Green New Deal last year, but since then we have expanded. We have expanded to include the many voices and visions of Black climate and environmental justice organizations and leaders from every region across the US. Expanded to a democratic bottom-up organizing process that allows multiple voices to be heard in our community needs and the vision to be centered around our people. So allow us to reintroduce ourselves. We are the Black Hive. We are a collective of over 200 Black environmental and climate justice organizations and climate justice leaders. We are so excited and we are so committed to use our collective experience and knowledge to assess how climate and environmental justice is impacting Black communities in the US and across the global Black diaspora. Well, we know a few things, right, y'all? We all understand that our people deserve climate resiliency that ensures futures for Black lives, right? We deserve to be here. And it is our time, right? It's time for us to end anti-Black racism. Corporate greed, government neglect, extraction has been allowed to ravage our communities for far too long. Today, we say no more. No more to sacrificing Black lives, no more to accepting false solutions, no more waiting. We are resilient. We have hope in one another. We believe we can build Black climate resiliency for Black people across the globe. We will create a livable planet for everyone because we already know when you save Black lives, you save all lives, right? So we're here today to introduce to you all some amazing work that we've been doing, right? So I wanted to start off with this thing. We have a mandate. When we say that, I think about the mandate for Black people. The mandate for all Black people in this time is to revenge the suffering of our ancestors, to gain the respect for future generations, and to be willing to be transformed in the service of the work, says Mary Hooks, one of the leaders of the Black Movement for Black Lives. Now, what is the Black Climate Mandate? I am so happy you all have asked. So the Black Climate Mandate is a blueprint for why we must all take action to protect our planet and save our people. Our mandate also provides suggested steps we all can take. We're going to build solutions, alternatives, and responses to this climate crisis. We will not stand by and watch our people suffer. We will not sacrifice Black lives for false solutions. And we already know, again, when you save Black lives, you save all lives. In this document, we have outlined the urgency and the need for us to take action before we lock into the 1.5 Celsius climate change and devastating and deadly impacts on Black lives. Our mandate calls for dismantling the status quo, providing climate reparations, because they can run us our bag, and investing in NGO and government resources into transformative climate change strategies and alternatives that protect and defend all Black lives. We also want to make sure that we pay homage to all of the Black ancestors and elders that have paved the way for us globally. We know that the climate and environmental justice movement has always and will continue to be led by Black people. Black climate justice and environmental justice leaders demand that where we are born and live should not determine our quality of living, the state of our health, our access to resources, and our ability to recover from the climate hazards. That is injustice. Data shows that Black communities in the US and globally are disproportionately polluted. Black communities are exposed to 56% more air pollution than we create, and that is not by accident. It is time for the government and violent extractive corporations to take responsibility for repairing the harm they've created by destroying Black lives in our community. Climate and environmental justice also includes reparations for Black people to support us in restoring the land, water, and the air we breathe in our communities, and that we uphold and prioritize civil and human rights, health, and environmental protections. Climate and environmental justice means listening to and acting in accordance with Black community leadership around the globe. We have to start listening to our people. And critically, it demands self-determination for communities. Black people have been the most heavily impacted by climate and environmental justice. And yet we hold all of the knowledge and solutions to address these injustices. So we say no more. Moving forward, Black communities require the resources, power, and opportunity to intervene in decisions being made that poses a present and future harm to our communities, homes, and lives. This is our Black climate mandate. So I am really excited to introduce to you all and to go deeper into our Black climate mandate, some of our leaders from the Black Hive. You're going to hear from 9 different leaders on our 9 different pillars to discuss what does it mean when we say we have a Black climate mandate? What does it mean for us to request climate reparations and to get to solutions and to uplift alternatives for our people? So I am super excited always to be in partnership with this amazing sister. Amazing climate leader, environmental justice leader, been in the game over 20 years. I mean, I always get choked up talking about her because she's so great. I'm coming all the way from Brooklyn, New York, Tamara Toes O'Laughlin, founder and director of Climate Critical Earth. There we go. I got it right. How you doing, sis?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here with you and to launch the Black Climate Mandate in Technicolor. I'm really excited to be here tonight. And Brooklyn is ready.
I know Brooklyn is ready. Brooklyn stay ready though.
That's true. That's true. Underneath this is a tracksuit, to be fair.
Facts. So tomorrow, we're here to talk about climate, right? Yeah. And some people, oddly enough, still don't believe that climate is a problem on our earth, right? But you know, us as the Black Hive, we're saying we're in a climate crisis. What does that mean? Can you explain to people?
Yeah, so Climate Critical Earth is just one of apparently 200 interventions that prove that not only are we in this work, not are we doing this work, we are leading this work. We are the strategy and the tactics that make it go. The climate crisis itself isn't really about things that seem far away. Folks worry about whether or not they have to become really comfortable in a forest setting if that's not where they're from, or in the country if that's not where they live, or the city if that's not where they plan to be. But environments for Black people, what environmental justice has taught us is that race is a determinant factor of whether or not the place you live can kill you. And so the environment is everything you breathe, is where you live, play, pray, and love. So all of that is the environment. And if you sell coffee in a cart, if you gather fish for food, if you hunt, if you grow your own fruits and vegetables, or whatever you choose to grow in the earth, you are aware that we are in the climate crisis, because it's harder to do what you've always done. It's hotter than it needs to be. It's flooding where it wasn't, and things are on fire spontaneously. So we're not in a conversation about whether or not the climate crisis is real to Black people. It's whether or not the Black people will be supported in recovering from, repairing to, and restructuring their lives around what climate is doing to what we have.
Absolutely, Tamara. So, you know, I think about our good sister, Leah Penniman, up at Soul Fire Farms in upstate New York. And last time I heard her speak, she said this quote, all the issues we fight for mean nothing if we do not have an earth to inhabit. And I think about that in the framework of Black liberation, right? When it comes to the climate crisis, what are some of the things that we must do to make sure that we can ensure Black futures?
Yeah, my favorite way to get people to think about it, as you said, is that people ask, what is the Black climate mandate? Well, it's health, it's land, it's energy, it's water, it's economy, it's climate reparations, it's democracy, it's recognizing that we didn't come here on our own and yet we built everything that exists, right? But recognizing that the everything that we're talking about is our only connection to our soul selves. Like, we are not just the labor that drives economy. We are not just the infrastructure that keeps everything going. We are not just infrastructure. So the value of a Black climate mandate, which encompasses all the ways that Blackness has shown up in this place and all over the globe, is about recognizing that not just we exist, not just that we have dignity, but that we have a place, and that place must be repaired because the world has benefited from our very existence. So the Black Climate Mandate really just calls out the need to flag that you cannot do this without us. You cannot pass anything that exists. The world that has exists and the world that will exist requires Black people who have for too long been both essential and invisible. So we are reclaiming our visibility, making sure people are clear that we will not continue to support everything that exists in the shadows. And we're calling for a future where there are Black people, which requires us to be in every forum where our rights are being crushed.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Tamara. You know, one thing I always think about, especially when I hear you talk, right, you come with a lot of the history behind this thing, right? And one thing I always hear is that the people who are impacted the most by the climate crisis are not the people who are causing the climate crisis. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of ways to think about it. We could look at just emissions, which a lot of legislation and a lot of the technical conversations are about when it gets too hot for people to live here, because we'll have turned this earth into a convection oven. The earth will continue and we will not be here, right? So then we can talk about the data, but what we actually need to talk about is the fact that for Black communities, we are not talking about 2030, 2040, 2050. We are currently experiencing the climate crisis. We are currently suffering from a lack of deficit, from financial violence that has put us in a position to be most likely to be harmed when systems fail. If you have, we're just recently celebrating the anniversary of Katrina, which was the last time we had to have a global conversation about how one form of vulnerability will make you vulnerable to other things. We're also currently in a COVID moment, which I like to call the cascading crisis, because on top of being invisible and essential, being financially divested from, being put in a position to be vulnerable, and having your race as the reason why that happens, all of these things compound so that when the bad weather comes, when the hot weather comes, when the flood comes, when the illness comes, we have less places to go to be resilient, to retreat, or to have safety. And so this is a moment where we have to be thoughtful about how we plan for and schedule making sure that there are Black people in the future, because it's not going to happen if we don't fight for it. And I'm really excited to share the stage with so many incredible people who are thinking about the how, who are thinking about the ways that it's going to happen, who are launching experiments as we speak. This stuff is not happening in a laboratory. It's happening on the corner, in your community, in the street, at your church. And if you don't go to the church, it's happening at the bus stop. We'll see you there.
That's right. Thank you so much, Tamara. I really appreciate you. And y'all, I need y'all to understand, just like Tamara said, sharing this space with all these amazing Black climate leaders. I always tell people these are the smartest Black people I know. Okay? Smart as hell. They always thinking about what's going on with our earth, how's this impacting Black people, and how can we get our people to resiliency that we can ensure Black futures. Thank you so much, Tamara.
Thank you.
I'm also, thinking through the Black climate mandate. There's so many amazing pieces, right? And a right to breathe is one of those things. And I think about that. And then I also think about our relationship to the land, right? We understand that land has been something that we have been connected to, our people have been connected to before the first African was stolen from the continent and brought here to the United States, right? We know that our people have been connected to the lands through extractive labor and things like that. We also know that health has not always been afforded to us because of the meager conditions that we are forced to live in, right? So I'm so happy to bring these two sisters to the stage with me to discuss these two pillars, right? First, and not least, not our last, but one of our best, Elise Rossaman, from Seattle, Washington, who will be talking about health with us today, and Dr. Jasmine Ratliff from the National Black Food Justice Alliance out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Y'all come on up, sisters. There y'all go. Looky cute. Hey, y'all.
Hey, B.
Hey.
Hey, Dr. J.
So I'm super excited, right? So I always tell them, like, the Black Hive, like, we do this work all the time, right? We've been doing this work for a very, very long time, right? And I'm super grateful to have one of the directors from the National Black Food Justice Alliance and a sister who's been working on public health for so long in the Black Hive, so that we can make sure those components are always addressed for our communities. So I want to start with you, Elise. I got a question for you. You ready?
Ready.
All right. So y'all remember a few years back when our brother Eric Garner was murdered?
Yeah.
And he screamed, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." He said it over and over. And, you know, a lot of us felt that. We felt that watching our brother be murdered. We understand that in a lot of different ways, right? And as a climate leader and environmental justice leader, we sometimes think about that in other ways, right? So when we say we have a right to breathe and we say we can't breathe, what is it that we're saying, Elise?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, health is a human right. And for far too long, Black people have been targets for pollution and other environmental hazards in our communities and in our homes that are literally cutting our lives short. So whether it's over policing, like Mr. Garner and so many others, to food apartheid, to toxic air, water, soil, the intentional targeting and devaluing of Black communities has to stop. That's why we're here. So no longer will we tolerate sacrificing Black lives for white profit and comfort. And prioritizing the health of Black people is critical and essential to climate justice, because our ability to recover from natural disasters and other harmful climate events is directly connected to our health. So health is crucial for the liberation of Black people today, now, and also for Black people for generations to come. And so the Black Hive is really calling for health justice as a part of the climate justice work we're doing, and health justice for all Black people, because our lives matter. Black lives matter, right? And so that's really what comes to mind.
Thank you so much, Elise. Doc Jazz, you know, we scream free the land. We scream free the land. Let's talk about it. When we say free the land, when the Alliance say free the land, when InfraBL says free the land, what is it that we're saying?
Yeah, so when we say free the land, we're referring to freeing it from those capitalistic extractive uses. We're talking about those current capitalist models that own land, which we know land can't really be owned, but whereby these resources are exploiting and extracting, like, from the land, and there's lots of harm that's being done, and specifically by human interaction. So when we say free the land, we're removing that land from these speculative markets so that it can be collectively stewarded with regenerative practices and intergenerational and indigenous knowledge. When we say free the land, we're demanding the end to all of the different methods of violence. So you heard about the police violence, but there's corporations and capitalistic entities that are using land as a vehicle to perpetuate harm that is erasing our communities. So when we say free the land, we mean free the land and free the people.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for that. So Elise, health, right? So we talk about Black liberation. We talk about what it looked like for us to be free, right? What are some of the things that you could think about, or some alternatives that, you know, folks are doing around health that is helpful to our people?
Yeah, there's so much going on. I mean, I would really love to turn it back to Dr. Jazz for all the community gardening work that she's doing, that she's leading, and so many countless other Black farmers out there doing this work to feed and nourish our bodies with vegetables, fruits that come from the land, right? But also just so much resilience. And we have so many assets in Black communities that I think often gets overlooked. We have so much social capital, so much political capital, and like the idea of climate justice that really makes me excited and health justice that really makes me excited is that we are going to have to transition. We're going to have to change, and change is hard, right? And change provides a lot of opportunities, including opportunities for solutions that are health promoting for Black folks, and including solutions that are helpful in terms of ending discrimination, particularly racial discrimination. We have those opportunities right now, and that's what's so exciting. And so right now, we're focused on ending the poisoning of Black communities, right? And bringing out the bad and bringing in the good, because we hold the solutions. We've held them for forever. And now we have this opportunity right here and to improve our health individually, and a household, or on a community and a global scale. And so that's what makes me so excited about the Black Hive's work, is really coming together for all of these different visions of what this world can look like, where we are really prioritizing health for everybody, and particularly for Black folks around the world.
Yes, yes. So y'all, what she pretty much saying is, we don't need nobody to be talking for us. We got our own solutions. You know, we talk about, we hear from our people, and we can speak for ourselves. And we have our solutions. Y'all just need to move out the way and let us get access, and we can do it ourselves. Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz. We got to talk about land as it relates to liberation. Like, as when I first got into the movement, the first thing that I was taught was free the land, right? I don't understand liberation without it, right? I would love for you to talk about that, and then talk about some of the demands that we're calling for in the Black Climate Mandate.
Absolutely. I'm fired up. My heart is just pumping with so much joy right now. We've been talking about our ancestors, and so I want to be sure that highlight Malcolm X, and he did say that revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. And with that, we know that land is tied to our right history and existence, and our dignity in the survival of Black communities. Land is such an important strategy for liberation because we need it to build our own self-determining food economies. I also love to bring in Reverend Wendell Paris, who's an elder in the community. He says, when we can feed ourselves, we can free ourselves. And I feel that land is just such an important strategy for liberation because it provides for all of our practical needs. We can build community, we can have our food and our housing. And I'll keep quoting, but this is my last quote here on Fannie Lou. Gotta bring Mama Fannie in. Fannie Lou Hamer said, we're fighting for the rights of all human beings, and we're going about the thing in a very good way. And because we know if you give us food, we can eat for a few days. But if you give us the tools, we'll produce for ourselves. I just don't want people to have to give me and my people a welfare check. I want some land. So right. We don't want only land. We want a whole list of demands that are outlined in that Black Climate Mandate. So if you haven't read it yet, I'm definitely encouraging you to read it and share it, and keep holding people accountable. So some of those demands that we have is to end the foreclosures and seizures of all Black land, ending all of those foreclosures, not just having a moratorium that's temporary, but having multi-generational lifetime stewardship programs for restorative agriculture cooperatives, debt forgiveness for predatory land laws, and land redistribution via community land trusts that are all accompanied by legal guarantee of viable land. And lastly, we're demanding a schedule for divestment from practices that conflict with restorative and regenerative land practices. Free the land, y'all.
Free the land. And Dr. Daz, I'm not gonna let you go until we talk about these Black farmers. We got to talk about Black farmers. We got to make room for our brothers and sisters, right? And I know the Alliance have been leading a lot of work on that. Will you take a second and give us some updates of what you all have going on to support Black farmers?
Yeah, honestly, one of our biggest projects that's tied to the land is our resource commons, and it's led by a council of members. We're all democratically governed, and we're working to regain stewardship of 15 million acres. That's the land that's been stolen from us. So we're working, it is a big number, and we're working together with other land collectives so we can ensure that this land is removed from the speculative market and is no longer lost. So I'm excited to be working with my comrade, Kenya Crummell, and all the beautiful Black people at the Alliance to make this happen.
Yes, yes, yes. Shout out to both Elise and Dr. Jazz. We sure appreciate you all bringing all of your expertise on behalf of the Black Hive in your communities. To make sure that all voices are heard. Free the land, y'all. Free the land. So, y'all, yes, we are talking about land. Yes, we are talking about health. Yes, we are talking about climate. I think oftentimes people think that climate is just like a hurricane or a fire here and there, but it's inclusive of all of these things. So we're going to talk about it all today. So I am super and always happy. These two Southerners, one is the Southerner, one from the Midwest, always holding down always holding it down. It's always a great pleasure to work in partnership with these two individuals. I want to welcome our amazing fan from Flint, Michigan, co-founder and co-director of Flint Rising, Naira Sharif, to the stage. And none other than Reverend Malcolm, founder and executive director of the People's Justice Council from Birmingham, Alabama. Y'all come on up. Join me to the stage. Hey, y'all.
What up, yo?
Hey.
How y'all doing?
Man, I'm
doing
so
good.
excited.
How you doing, Sister B?
Good. Oh, man, I'm so excited to have y'all on the stage. Who better else to have in our space to talk about energy and water than you two? Right. For those who don't know, these two individuals have been on the front line of these fights for a very, very long time. And we're super excited to bring that expertise to the Black Hive and to also be in partnership with all of the amazing work that they're doing for their communities and their regions. So let's jump into this thing. So let's talk about some water, Naira. Let's talk about some water. Everybody say it's one of the most controversial issues, right? Sea level rise, flooding, droughts, drinking water, right? As a person who's been on the front lines of a fight for water for a long time, what does it mean when we say water is life?
I mean, water is essential to like human existence. But the crazy part is like it's commodified and water futures are being traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It's a key resource for like extraction of like the fossil fuel industry. They're using it for like lithium mining. So they use it also for like mining and like hydrofracking. And, and then like they even like bottle it and sell it to you, like, so it's crazy with all the things of the water on top of saltwater intrusion, like the high rains that like creates flooding to your home. Like it's just wild.
So much. Water impacts us in every way, y'all. Like I can't imagine life without it. You can't drink.
I mean, you can't. It's like you can only live for 3 days without water. So it's essential to existence on this planet.
And it's crazy that it's water everywhere. You always say water everywhere and not a drop to drink, right? Naira, they always say that. And, I think about water often as people think about all these false solutions that they're pitching to our people. We're not going to go down a rabbit hole of the electric vehicles and how much water they use up, but we'll talk about that later. But Reb, how you doing, Reb?
I'm good. Listen, I am fired up about this event, man. It's Black Hive coming. My bad. I didn't know.
I mean, sometimes you just catch the spirit, Reb. That's just what happens,
That's it. You got to get it.
That's right. So let's talk about some energy, Reb. So many false solutions as it relates to energy. To me, sometimes when I hear about energy, that's when I hear the most false solutions, right? They just do not want to transition over to the renewable energy. We got to do it, right, Reb? So my thing is, what are some of the truths around energy as it relates to Black communities? And what are some of our true solutions for us to get to 100% renewable energy?
Yeah, so we talk about renewable, and let's be honest, renewable is that's sexy. But one of the things that we tend to forget about in the whole renewable aspect is we can slap solar on people's houses, we can throw wind up all over the place, but if you don't seal up those people's houses, you hadn't saved that household at all. And the truth of the matter is the state of energy here in these yet to be United States of America is unequitable. And so you have people who look like us, Black folk, single mothers, older mothers, older grandmothers who are paying upwards to 20% of their income towards their utilities. But let me see if I can't paint the picture a little bit better, because that sounds good for those who can actually pay that and no problem. We can write a check and whatever the bill is and not really balk at it, as long as it doesn't go so high. But imagine you're only bringing $2,000 in a month, and you've got a family of 4 to feed, but then you've got a $500 light bill. That can make it real hard to come out of poverty, and that's exactly where we have our state of energy in these yet to be United States of America. So when we talk about renewable energy, let's talk about not just renewing energy for the planet, but also renewing energy in the homes for the people as well. And that's not just talking about the energy to flip the lights on, but that's talking about how we energize upward mobility for our communities. And our demands with the Black Hive do just that. We ask for upward mobility in the form of health and wealth. And that's where we are. So that's my long answer, because I'm a preacher. You just have to tell me to be a little shorter if you want less than that, B.
Preach, just preach. Yeah, what I want to take a moment to do, y'all, is let's give Naira some space, because I know you've been fighting on the front line in Flint. And we all saw in the news just a few weeks ago that decision that was made, right? Just can you tell us a little bit of what's happening on the front lines so that everybody everywhere can know that you all are still fighting?
Yeah, so Veolia, which is a transnational corporation, like they're based in France, and their business is privatization and management. So they work in privatization, water systems, transportation, so bus lines, and then also like wastewater systems. They were in Flint, the emergency manager, released an RFP to look at the Safe Drinking Water Act violation that Flint had back in 2014. And Veolia came in on this $40,000 contract to research, and give recommendations of how the city of Flint wouldn't have the Safe Drinking Water Act violation, which was a chlorination byproduct. It was total trihalomethanes. And they were more interested in trying to secure the bag and kind of be in Flint like more long-term than centering public health of, look, this is happening, so you could possibly have lead contamination in your water. So they were sued, and there was a mistrial like a couple of weeks ago. And, it's crazy. So, and then also, I would also say that, Flint was I would say probably sparked kind of like this new movement of clean, safe, affordable drinking water in the United States. And one of the things that I found the most mind blowing, which was probably like right after the Department of Justice, investigated Ferguson and basically said that, the police department was using the residents as an ATM machine. Water systems do that to water customers all the time. So they're raising the water rates to kind of meet whatever their fever dreams. And you have folks becoming unhoused because they're unable to pay their water bills. So lack of water and sanitation in your home is not only a public health issue, it can cause you to be unhoused or tax foreclosure, or your children could be taken away by Child Protective Services. So we need to ensure, one, that we need to ban privatization in all its forms when it relates to water. We need to have a human right to water and sanitation, as legislation, and not the UN mandate that the United States has not ratified. That's another TED talk of all of the UN declarations that the U.S. hasn't ratified. But I think that I'm over here cracking up. But you know, like the other thing is like, you know, like we hope and we pray that when we turn on the tap that the water is safe. And that shouldn't be like, I don't want to like have my very existence and like my whole quality of life and what type of like chronic illnesses I may have, like based in hopes and prayers, you know, like how messed up is that?
That's right. That's right. Thank you for sharing that, Naira. You know, to hope and pray when you turn on the water from the tap is a reality that a lot of Americans are living with. I hear about Jackson, Mississippi under boiling water alerts all the time. And to me, Flint, Michigan definitely opened my eyes to water. I cut my teeth in climate organizing with water, but it was through sea level rise, right? Never thought about my drinking water being under attack because capitalism and privatization. Reb, you know, you work on energy and you also live in the Gulf, right? Where big oil runs the show, honey, right? So I would love for you to talk about some of the stuff that you all are doing in the Gulf to counteract some of the things that are happening with these big oil companies that are continuously harming our people.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate because we just had recent legislation that still seems not to protect us in the Gulf. And we've got a threat of even more legislation that's coming that further assaults us in the Gulf. Because we have big industry, big fossil fuel industry that comes and they plant in our communities. And when they come, they bring their burden and we get no benefits from it. It's unfortunate that we can't stop it most of the time because of the way that permitting and zoning is set up. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the South to prevent fossil fuel from basically taking over our communities and our homes. But there's a lot that we can do together as community that protects us while we're in our homes and in community. And one of the things that we're doing with the People's Justice Council, we've started Resilience to Restoration Hub, where we're targeting communities of faith to once again become that beacon of light or that service for their communities and helping their communities to be more resilient during these disasters, these constant and deliberate disasters that we face, but also in helping to advocate against them to end them for their communities. We believe that if communities of faith would raise their voices to fight for our people, we can change the narrative of the conversation where it's no longer about profit, but it becomes about people and how we are doing, how we're treating one another. And it becomes a moral conversation versus this corporate and capitalistic conversation of whether we treat one another right or not. So these are some of the things that we're doing as the People's Justice Council, but all throughout there are people in the South who are fighting against utility companies, both the major utilities as well as rural electric co-ops, trying to infiltrate boards, working against the Public Service Commission or working even with some of the Public Service Commission that fight on our behalf, and just making sure that we're fighting against these utility company takeovers, monopolies, not allowing us to have solar and access to renewable energies in our communities, making sure that we can fight together collectively so that we can reap the benefits and not just the burdens of this pollution that we bear.
That's right. Thank you so much. Y'all, I wanted to make sure that y'all heard from Reb and Naira for many reasons. One, you know, since Hurricane Katrina, people outside of the Gulf forget that the Gulf's still fighting. You know, since the whole water crisis went big on social media around Flint in 2014, people forget that people are still fighting on the front lines in Flint, right? Sometimes people think that the the climate crisis only looks like a forest fire or a hurricane or a tornado. But a lot of these environmental injustices are man-made, right? And this is a clear indication of that. And I am so proud to know that Reverend Malcolm and Naira are both still on the front lines fighting for our people, right? Our people are still fighting, y'all, on the front lines. We just asking for folks to get involved, right? It's still room in these ranks for everybody. I want to give a shout out to our ASL interpreters who have been working really, really hard. We see you and we appreciate you. Thank y'all so much, Naira and Reverend Malcolm. We really appreciate all of your amazing work and bringing all of your knowledge to the space to share with our people. Keep the fight going. So, just so much stuff. I am smiling like this so big. I'm always smiling like this so big when I'm talking with the Black Hive because everybody is just so amazing and so dope. Up next, we want to talk about labor and we want to talk about climate reparations. Yes, climate has something to do with labor. And yes, climate has something to do with our reparations. And we're going to talk about it right now. I am more than excited to bring to the stage Gina Boo, Jilo, and Wes Goldbar. Gina Boo was out of the Bronx. I messed up earlier. I almost said Fan was out of Brooklyn, but I was checked immediately from the Bronx. And Wes Goldbar out of DC. Welcome to the stage. How y'all doing?
Hey, thanks for having us, V.
Doing good.
Good. Thank y'all so much for coming on and all the amazing work that you all are doing. And y'all know we got to talk about it. We got to talk about this labor and all of the messed up history of what goes on with that, y'all. And then we're going to talk about these climate reparations. A lot of people are not familiar with that. So Wes, I want us to start with you, right? A lot of people are not familiar with climate reparations. Right? A lot of people are, it's just a new term that some people are just hearing for the first time. Maybe not none of us, but some people are just hearing it for the first time. Can you explain what climate reparations is?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for us to know is that the climate crisis is the child of capitalism and colonialism. So the same systems that have exploited our labor and our bodies for 400 years and that took us from Africa also uprooted our entire planet, right? And so the global north, the US, Europe, they bear responsibility for those two evils of colonialism and capitalism, but they have also contributed the most to climate change, right? And so it means that now because of that, because of all these things, Black communities are across the world are not just redlined and frontlined on the centers of climate disasters. And now we have to actually take action to put them at the center of what climate solutions look like. And so the people who have caused this harm need to invest in Black communities so that we can create the solutions that we need to have a regenerative economy. So that's just really important to make sure that we are putting the money where the harm has been done and where we can build up ground up solutions.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for that, Wes. Because a lot of people are very unaware of why we are calling for climate reparations, but we're going to dig into it some more. But, you know, Jana Boo, I think about, the history of labor as it relates to Black people, not just here in the US, but usually around the world, right? And I know how, it has morphed into these global institutions that are still extractive, that are still harmful to our people. But I know we can reimagine what labor is, right? So what are some of the things you think about as it relates to labor and climate?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, V, for this question. And, the beauty of the climate justice movement is that as CJ practitioners and activists, we're actively building a new future, right? And that includes a relationship to work. So work is, in my opinion, so much more than how capitalist and white supremacist structures define labor, right? It's not just me going to work every day to collect a paycheck to pay for my house and my electricity bill, right? It's about everything that we do to add value to our lives, from how we care for our families and communities to how we resolve conflict and harm to how we contribute to the well-being of our planet. Right. So for me, organizing Black labor through democratic cooperation makes the future that we want possible. And that means that we have to protect those who are adding value to our communities. This is like real personal for me, right? My mom is an immigrant from Guinea, West Africa, came here because of colonial extractivist systems that, kind of messed up the country. And she came to the US looking for a good job. And she right now is a Black immigrant caretaker, right? And we know that these care jobs and folks who are in these care jobs are devalued because of the color of their skin and because of the places where they come from. And I feel like this is just such a great pillar because it brings together so many aspects of our Black climate mandate, right? We're talking about when we reimagine labor, right? Really building up a system where Black people are able to live freely and joyously because we have a say over the work that is valuable in our communities, and we make investments in what is important to us, right? So we're talking about folks having access to health and safety at their jobs, right? Like everybody has benefits, everybody has access to childcare, and we're really reinvesting in the care system that makes it possible for all of us to add value back into our communities.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Jada. So I know these are two topics usually people do not think about when they think about climate, right? Most folks do not tie economy into it. Most folks do not tie labor into it at all, when they are literally two of probably some of the most important ones that we can think about. And once you learn about it, it like blows your mind, right? So, Wes, when we talk about economy and climate reparations, because we need reparations right now, not tomorrow, right now, what are some of the demands that we are talking about in the Black Climate Mandate?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Well, first of all, Black people demand climate reparations immediately, as you just said, and a just transition from polluting and extractive economies towards a sustainable future. What is a just transition? That's a term that's thrown around a lot. And the thing is, people want to throw tens of trillions of dollars at climate and without really saying what that means. But we have to have, labor was brought up, we have to have jobs that people can support their families on and have control over what investments look like in their communities, that things aren't happening to them, that they can determine what is built and when and how it benefits their communities. And we have to stop polluting industries and invest in communities that have been harmed by those same industries. And Black communities have been the de-industrial communities. They've been hollowed out by industrialization, by pollution, and we can invest in them, and they can be the heart of our regenerative and climate solutions. And we need to protect Black people from harm, right? Because again, Black people have been dying from air pollution. The climate crisis is not something that happens in 10 years. It's killing Black people right now. You probably have people in your family or community that have cancer or asthma, and maybe they live next to a fossil fuel plant or facility, and those things are interconnected and related. So we need to stop harm to Black health and through legislation and enforce that. And we need reparations for stolen land and labor, because the same companies and institutions and governments who have benefited from generations of unpaid labor need to repay that with interest, and through real, direct, and tangible investments to Black communities from the global South to the Gulf South. And if we don't do this, we can't solve the climate crisis by rebuilding the old system. We have to have something new that doesn't just benefit the 1%. The choice between us is environmental justice or extinction. It is ecological ruin or reparations. So we need reparations and a just transition now.
That's right. It's either or. Either or. We can't have both, right? We're asking folks to make a decision. Absolutely. Janable, let's talk about some of these demands, because I want to make sure we lay it out for folks, because people need to know and understand very clearly what we mean when we talk about labor as it relates to the Black Climate Mandate.
Right. I think the first one that folks talk about a lot, right? It's just transition, right? And what does that mean for us? It's a guarantee that all coal, oil, and gas workers be given at least 5 years of wages taken from shareholder profits, because these corporations are taken from us every single day, right? And we want to use this money to support them in job retraining opportunities, insurance coverage, pension support, early retirement offerings, healing, and priority placement in alternative energy jobs, right? And just transition is bigger than that, obviously, right? We're building up a new economy. So we demand investment in our care economy. So we want formal recognition of the care economy and this workforce with quantifiable value and compensation via universal basic income as a recognition of their economic contribution to society. And another demand I'll add is that we want reforms, policies, and programs to support individuals working in traditional care and manufacturing and labor roles with life-affirming support structures. We need paid family leave, holistic healthcare, livable wages, retirement plans, and vacation days because we all need to rest. We need universal childcare and also the right to organize because we're stronger when we have our voices organized together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, J. Boo. And yeah, I know I'm not going to let y'all off the stage till we talk about the IRA. So it's the Inflation Reduction Act that was just signed into law just here recently. And, you know, the Black Hive came out very strong in opposition to that. And I wanted to give you all a few minutes to explain some of your thoughts as you all were writing that statement.
Yeah. I think, you know, the Black Hive, our first interest in moving for Black lives is speaking in behalf of Black communities, speaking for Black communities' needs, right? And we have to recognize that not all climate solutions are created equal. There is a overwhelming narrative about a unvarnished public total good about this bill, and there are things that people are championing in there that will be helpful, but there's a lot in them that's going to harm Black communities. There's things such as, if you get the chance to Google carbon capture storage, that will enable the fossil fuel industry to continue polluting in communities. It is going to enable, through a lot of the deals they've made, a lot of fossil fuel infrastructure that's going to hurt people in the Gulf South, in Louisiana, in Texas, in a lot of fossil fuel producing regions when people are breathing polluting air. And so also, again, with a lot of the funding that's going towards solar and wind, these other things, who will the money go to? President Biden said he's going to give 40% of federal climate dollars to disadvantaged communities, and that's called Justice 40. But we aren't sure that Justice 40 isn't just going to be 40 acres and a mule all over again. And so we have to tell the truth about what's in the bill, because if we don't, it's just going to be more of the same all over again. And there's a lot that can be changed as we keep moving forward. And here's the thing. This bill happened to Black community. It was sort of pushed through Congress in the way it was in a non-collaborative process. Build Back Better, you had a lot of organizers going back and forth with the Senate in the earlier version of the deal. And now that happened behind closed doors with two wealthy white senators, because we need more power and we need to organize. And so that's the importance of the Black Hive and why we're here today, because we are building Black power towards climate justice, towards solutions that benefit our communities. And so if you are a Black leader, and if you're Black and you're interested in climate and building power towards the real solutions that we need, a just transition and climate reparations and all the other pillars that were listed, join us, look at our mandate. If you are a white person or ally and you're interested in a line, look at how you can support us. Encourage organizations to support our goals, because we need more power. That's just the bottom line. And the Black Hive is a really important organizing tool. The last thing I'll say is that this isn't over. There is a deal coming in the next month that could possibly enable dozens of new fossil fuel projects in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities all over the country. And it's going to be locked in for decades. So we can stop that from happening. And just stay tuned, and there will be more opportunities to plug in and contact members of Congress who claim to represent Black communities, that this is not what we want, what we deserve. And so join the Black Hive, find out how to get involved, and let's keep fighting, y'all.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, baby. So I want, for everybody out there that's listening and paying attention, like, we coming with this type of smoke the whole entire time. No more are we sitting back and allowing people to speak for us, to go into the back office and make deals and force things on our communities that would not help our communities. We will talk about what care looks like, what a fair labor union looks like, what it looks like for our people to be able to work in places to take care of their families, but also take care of them, right? Make sure that they're safe and they're healthy, right? And we will talk about this reparations, that the United States owe all Black people all around the world. It is time, and it's right now. Thank y'all so much, both Wes and Gina Boo. I appreciate you all, and it's a pleasure to work with you all in this space. Oh, so much good stuff. So we got to talk about power to the people, right? All power to the people. I know y'all hear it all the time. I love what my brother Phil Agnew says, all power to the people, all joy to the people, all peace to the people. And I think about that with this next pillar. And then I think about how this climate crisis, I think sometimes, no, a lot of times we talk about it in a US context, right? But this climate crisis is impacting every Black people on every piece of land on this earth, literally. So we want to talk through how we can be in full solidarity to the global Black diaspora, how it's important that what we fight for, what we demand of our government here can also help and uplift our brothers and sisters that are not of this land, right? And then think about our brothers and sisters who need to migrate here due to climate crisis. So I'm really, really excited to invite these two amazing individuals to the stage with me. Beth Yerga out of PG County in the DC area from the Palm Collective. And we have the amazing Peniel Ebe out of DC, a Black Hive leader and one of the and she organizes also in the interfaith communities. I'm super excited to have y'all here. How y'all doing?
Great, V. It's always a pleasure to be here around brilliant, amazing people that are doing the work every day.
Yes.
Doing good. Alive, breathing.
I know that's here. Right. Hey, that's a goal these days, honey. Because it's going down here on the earth. I'm super excited to be in the space with y'all today. Always a pleasure to work in partnership with you all. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it right now. One of our pillars is democracy, right? And we're not just talking about this democracy when you go vote and all that. We talk about that too. Shout out to the Electoral Justice Project at N4BL, always holding us down. But we're talking about democracy. We're giving people power, right? And then we also want to talk about how we be in solidarity and what it is that the Black Hive is planning to do to make sure that we are in solidarity. So I want to start with you, Beth, if you don't mind. People always say people power. That's something that is largely used all the time. People are like, people power, right? But when we say it, I believe that we're saying something a little bit different. Can you tell us what it means when we say all power to the people?
Absolutely, V. So the climate crisis is threatening our vision for people power and our future existence as Black people. And to ensure that Black people across the global Black diaspora are prepared because it's here and now, as Sister Tamara shared, is that we must build our alternatives to our current economic and political systems rooted in this neoliberalism and white supremacy that are crushing our rights, as stated earlier in the call. Envisioning economies of care in the realms of the climate mandate that have been shared brilliantly by my fellow Black Hive members throughout this launch are essential for building the foundations of support to restructure, repair, and protect against climate change that is here today. I'm literally quoting all the amazing people that have been on this call because it all comes together when we talk about people power. And that was a quote from Tamara earlier. Grounding in a Black queer feminist practice, ensuring that the most impacted of us all, Black, queer, and trans beings, will push us toward a world of safety, self-determination, healthy communities, and global Black liberation that includes us all, Black people from all walks of life. Dr. Jazz shared earlier in her work with the land and with Black farmers, Elise talking about health, promoting to end racial discrimination locally on a global scale, right? Rev Malcolm and Naira talking about how current systems of energy and water are impacting our ability as Black communities to build health and wealth and stripping us of our mobility and our ability to build that people power. And Wes and Jenabu talking about how labor is being stripped from our communities to create the economies of care needed to best prepare us for our currently transforming world that is crushing us. And so that is kind of what we're talking about when we're building people power, talking about all the elements that all of us here on this call are talking about, and to strip particularly of Black communities. Black communities have never been thought of when it came to the democracy of America. And now, knowing where we're at in the States, and going back to what you said, V, of talking about maybe needing to migrate folks here because other countries are in flames and under fire, we need to be best prepared for all of those changes. And so just kind of in the sense of grounding in people power, that's what it is, bringing all of these elements together to ensure that we're creating economies of care. You know, after the racial reckoning of 2020, most recently, right, and are talking about when our brothers and sisters have been murdered over the years and it's become national news. Mutual aid has become a huge infrastructure of power, particularly in Black communities. And ensuring that that's a possibility. The one thing that I can't leave out of my mind is when Naira and Rev Malcolm were talking about how so many different walks of life are being impacted by the companies and industries that have names, have addresses, right? Like this did not just come out of nowhere, right? People are killing the planet, industries are killing the planet, and they have names and addresses, and we can go knock on some doors and hold them accountable. But who's being most impacted? Single moms, right? Our elderly Black folks in the global South being impacted by these continuously raising prices of elements that are most necessary for us to exist. And that people power is what's going to ensure that we are supporting all walks of life of Black folks, that this doesn't continue, and that we're creating economies of care to ensure that we're building our power together, that it doesn't continue. Yes.
Yes, I know that's right, y'all. Talk your shit, sis. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Y'all feel what I'm saying? If there's that, I don't even have no follow-up. You did that. But we gotta, we're gonna make sure that we not expand this conversation just a little bit. And I feel like it's the least we can do to make sure that all Black people are a part of our movement, right? When we say movement for Black lives, we're talking about all Black lives, right? So, Sister Peniel, how you doing? You good over there?
I'm alive. I'm here.
Right. So why do you think it's important, just off the top, that we make sure that we are in solidarity and alignment with our global Black diaspora brothers and sisters?
I think especially reflecting on what everyone has said, and the roots of this problem being in the colonialisms and all the isms that have really fragmented our community, it would be foolhardy to think that the solution exists in that separation, in that fragmentation, in the breaking apart of families and communities. It is the writing on the wall is clear. Our solutions have to be involved in what brings us together. We have to look at hand-holding as a way to get out of this mess, because what got us into this mess in the first place was that individualistic type of thinking, that way of like one economy over the other, the drawing of borders, of man-made borders, the separation antics that a lot of colonial powers enforced and embedded not only in their side of the world, but also in our communities as well, back home on the continent and across the earth generally. And so when I think of this pillar of this diasporic solidarity, I think of us bringing our entire selves into it, saying that we're no longer going to hold back who we are in the spaces of engagement, in the spaces of collaboration. We're going to come together. In bringing our entire selves, I do this work not from the perspective of just like Peniel, who is an advocate or a policy person or a Black person or female or a Christian, or I bring my entire self, because if I don't, then I'm not doing justice to solidarity. And I remember, a message that really allowed me to think about solidarity in a space that calls us to do work without borders, to do work without fragmentations, to do work without separation. It was this analogy in the Bible of the stranger, the host, and the guest. And I drew from that and I began to apply it to solidarity work, diasporic solidarity work, and looking at that diasporic solidarity as a tenet of advancing climate justice. Because climate action, I feel, when we talk about climate action, and the Inflation Reduction Act, for one, would be defined as a climate action bill. A climate action bill is kind of, it has a punitive lens to it. It's saying you did wrong, you polluted the earth, how are you going to stop polluting the earth? Climate justice is restorative. It's saying, how do we move forward? How do we heal? How do we restore what you've done wrong. It's not just address your sins, because if we do that, then we hear net zero, we hear carbon taxes, because we're just trying to balance out. We're like, if I sin a little and I give a little good, then I balance it out. That's not what this is about. This is about more than that. This is about moving us entirely away from that that rob Peter to pay Paul type of antics that got us here in the first place. And so when I think of, diasporic solidarity in that restorative justice sense, I think of being the guest, being invited into spaces with our Black diaspora, right? Communities on the African continent, in the Caribbean, Black people, anywhere they decide to be in, right? I think of being a guest in that space, saying you've been invited somewhere. Honor that invitation, because there is invitation for diasporic relationships. Communities are calling to say, don't leave us out of conversations. Don't forget about us. Come and see what's happening here. The seas are rising, the earth is on fire, the sky is falling down. Come and see what's going on here. And that's a guest. So you go in and you learn. You learn, you listen. I think of us not as leaders in the Black Hive, but learners in the Black Hive. That is what this work is about. And then you see yourself as a host. Sometimes you have to create space. You have to create space. And in that creating space, it doesn't mean you're in charge of it all, but it's saying I will make room for more than just myself. I will make room for more than just my thoughts and my problems. And then that means you're not passing bills like the IRA that ignores the realities of communities around the world, right? When you're a host, you're doing for more than just yourself. And then lastly, a stranger. We speak, yes, for Black lives in the United States, but we don't speak for all Black lives in the United States and around the world. There are things we don't know. And so we have to acknowledge that embodiment of being a stranger, not knowing, and being comfortable in not knowing, but not being comfortable in the ignorance, right? And so if you move from a stranger to a guest, to a host, you don't know, and then you're invited to learn. And then when you learn, wherever you are, you create space. You host space for more communities' voices. You host space. You say, if I'm here, my brethren is here as well. Nothing for us without us. All that's the sayings that we use to encourage ourselves in this work. It comes from that space, from moving in these spaces from one to the other. And then we see it in the demands that the communities come about. So if you're not a host or a guest or a stranger, you will never understand that reparations it's a broad framework. It's thinking about loss and damages. It's thinking about immaterial things. It's thinking about lost languages, lost livelihood, lost heritage, right? And not lost in the past 10 years, 400 years, and then some, right? You begin to expand your mindset of that. It's thinking about debt. Thinking about when you talk about debt in the concept of climate change, people don't particularly understand. It's about, we don't owe. Climate justice is not about what we owe and what we're returning. We don't owe. They took from us. I feel like that's the basis. Debt means you went and you borrowed. We're saying you made some messes. We have to clean up the mess. We're saying pay for it, and now you're calling it a debt and you're holding us accountable for your mess. It is a very warped mentality that we cannot continue to bring into our work. So that's the gist of when we say diasporic solidarity. We're saying we have to hold hands, and we have to hold it so tight that we see the mark, so we know somebody else was there. When they rip somebody apart, when they tear apart a community, you still have that feeling in that hand to say, I was holding on to someone. And you fight and you move in this work like someone was taken from you.
Yes. Can we pass the collection plate, baby? Because Vanilla just gave us a whole word. That's what I'm talking about. So before we leave this segment, y'all, I really want to ask y'all this question, right? I know we think about Black liberation all the time, right? I want to know, like, people power as it relates to Black liberation, diasporic solidarity. What do you see, or what are some examples of that you can see for our future? I could just jump in, whoever.
I'm going to take it a little local and talk about it from the lens of just being an Ethiopian American, growing up in the DMV and the DC metropolitan area, understanding that political power isn't where it is, right? Like, it's not the solution, but understanding that it's been purposefully stripped from us, and understanding that it is a stepping stones, right? Pinnell put it so beautifully, right? It's all these interconnected pieces of going from being a learner to becoming a guest to becoming a host, and kind of that transition. But if we haven't even been able to, you know, be seen as someone who's even equal to be able to a part of that space with all the political power and thinking of DC. And so for me, as being someone that kind of understands it from the multiple lens of being Ethiopian American, thinking of what is essential and being able to broaden our representation as Black people in a space that we have never felt fully heard of in kind of the political spaces. So I speak of it from like understanding the importance of like DC statehood and understanding the necessary components, and one of our demands of understanding the necessary components towards ending like that modern day ability to not be connected to that, maybe trying to connect that all together, and thinking about why that's so important, right? Why having DC statehood being something as a representation of Black communities in that space is so important. Just being able to, you know, highest proportion of Black residents, even with the violence of gentrification and attempting to erase Chocolate City and shifting the underrepresentation of Black voters in the American political system. We talked about people power, and we needed to kind of open up the lens of what that looks like across spaces. We talked about the global diaspora. We talked about building our communities and what that also looks like in this broken, disenfranchised system of democracy, and how we're trying to work towards that in our demands, and being able to understand why it's still an important factor in kind of thinking of the IRA and who's voting on those abilities and how it's been purposefully disenfranchised for so many years. And also accountability. I say this often as a trainer that has now been very honored to train across the world. It takes grace and accountability, right? Like when we take all of that beautiful narrative and storytelling of like how we become the hosts and hold on to everything, it's grace and accountability. And that's through political education and understanding that those that are killing the planet in the name of capitalism, neoliberalism, and just, you know, oppression of those that look complete opposite of them for centuries, have names, have addresses, and we can hold them accountable. And what that looks like to build people power to hold them accountable is so essential in this part of understanding our power. And there's information out there that is collecting all of these names and collecting all of these spaces, right? Killing this planet has been a job that has been going on for a very long time. And it's time that we take it to the stage and we let them know that we've seen you. We're at a point where that we can no longer go on, and that we come together powerfully as people to do that.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, amen. Peniel, come on.
Yes to everything. Yes to everything Beth has said. As I think of Black liberation, I'm just gonna I'm a singer and I live my life in songs, and a couple of songs are coming to mind. In this work, I always think, when I talk about climate migration, for example, I always talk about the fact ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river wide enough that will stop people from moving. And now when we think Black liberation, I'm thinking about another great, release your mind, release your body, release your soul, and whatever else she said. I say this to mean that Black liberation is freeing. Diasporic solidarity that leads to Black liberation is freeing. It means I don't have to do this alone, right? It means I can fall back. I can fall back and listen. I can fall back and learn. I don't have to be the one driving this car. I don't have to be the one moving this train, pulling this donkey along, whatever it is. And so diasporic solidarity allows us to then think, I don't have to have the solutions. And a lot of times we are in meetings with elected officials and the powers that be and these industries and these technocratic spaces where we feel like we have to know what 1 + 1 = 2 and the deriving factor for that. And then it almost, I feel like it freezes us in that moment because we feel like we don't know what the solution is. We don't know what the technical science solution is. But the thing is, we know what our people want and we know what we need, right? I think about when we do things around climate migration, a lot of times there are policies that are made on this end, and there's a lot of development projects that happen on the continent and in other communities. But oftentimes the question that is missed is asking people who are here already, what would you have needed to not move? What would you have needed to not have to depart and abandon your home and flee? Right. And so that's the question in this space. What would you have needed to be the best version of yourself? Who would you have needed to be the best version of yourself? And you can find that in solidarity with others. You have to go looking, you have to build community. So for me, that's Black liberation, is that I don't have to do this on my own. I don't have to be bold, Black, and beautiful on my own. I am bolder, I am Blacker, and more beautiful when I'm in solidarity. My community is stronger when there's mutual advancement, there's mutual aid. And so that's liberation, like not having to do it on your own. And until we lean into that in this work, until we lean into that in the way the policies are made, until we lean into that in the way the economy is going to go, until we lean into that in the way in the way we identify ourselves, in saying, I'm not alone in this. Because this work, especially the climate justice movement, it could feel like everything all at once. And I always encourage people in the faith community, in youth, I say, you don't have to do this on your own. And they want to make you think like you have to take down ExxonMobil in one day on your own. That's frightening you out of this work. If you know that there are many people, like Beth said, there are organizations, there are communities that have been working at this, go join hand in hand, and you will move forward. And so for me, that's Black liberation, is that somebody's going to catch me if I fall, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to teach me if I fail. Somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right. Ooh, that is a word. Reb, come get the benediction, because we're going to need one after this. Thank y'all so much, right? What I heard today is that the climate crisis, this fight to make sure that we have a better and a safer and a livable earth to live on, it is inclusive of so many things: land, water, labor, democracy, solidarity, people power, democracy. It's so many pieces, right? And I'm so excited to be in this work with you all so much. Y'all, that is the Black Hive. That's the Black Hive. And I'm going to just stop right there, and I'm going to pass it to my big sister from the Bay Area, Aya De Leon.
Yes. Oh my God. I am feeling it, y'all. That's the Black Hive. So I'm here to close it out. And I just need to say, here in Black August, we're just a couple months out from another important Black celebration. Here in the United States, we celebrate Juneteenth, which is all about freedom. And in 1863, the enslavement of Black people was outlawed. But see, it was those pre-internet days, and the Black folks in Texas didn't get the message till 1865. So basically, for 2.5 years, there was some disinformation floating around that it was still legal to hold them in a condition of enslavement. And when it comes to climate, there's also some disinformation floating around right now. And there are 3 major pieces that the Black Hive has decided to confront. First, that climate isn't a Black issue and Black people don't care about the environment. Climate is very much a Black issue because we are among the hardest hit by the climate crisis. As members of the Black Hive on the call tonight have shown, we make the connections between the need to shift priorities and resources, defund police, divest from fossil fuels. But beyond that, when it comes to our connection to the environment, our condition of enslavement meant that we were the stewards of the land. We brought all that we knew collectively from our millennia of stewarding our own indigenous lands in Africa. Our blood is in this soil. And with our Black climate mandate, we claim that connection and are sharing our vision. And another piece of disinformation, and this I think is the worst piece, that in the climate crisis, we are doomed. It's too late. That's a lie, because scientists are 100% certain that we can save the planet. We can ensure a livable future. We already have all the solutions we need, and they involve massive and sweeping political and economic changes that would shift our economies from focusing on profit to focusing on human needs. But the shady and the greedy don't want that. So they continue to offer false solutions that will enrich themselves, sacrifice Black lives, and won't even really solve the problem. We can only save our species if we make the changes needed to fully decarbonize our economies. There's huge resistance to that among corporate and political leaders, which is why we need to organize and build a powerful movement that can demand and win these changes. Time is short, but we can still do it if we act now, act powerfully, and act together. Now, I understand as Black people, we are tired. Yes, it's exhausting to fight on yet another front where Black people are being attacked. And this is why we need to build a movement that is big enough and strong enough and in coalition with other movements so we can do all this heavy lifting together. We're talking about building that people power folks have been saying on the call. And that doesn't mean someone else. That means you. The climate crisis, I know, is so big that we can get intimidated. Some of it has to do with science. And we know that Black people are systematically harmed by these educational systems, which make us think, well, we're not smart enough. We don't have enough information. But if you know something is wrong, very, very wrong, then you do have enough information. Like our sister, Black environmental justice writer Mary Heglar says, I don't care how long you've been involved in the climate conversation, 10 years or 10 seconds. That's right. You are the one who can act to save this world for you, your family, your community. We want you to join this movement. Another critical piece of disinformation is that because we've never built such a big movement in the past, that we can't do it now. This speaks to how we're in the midst of another crisis, a crisis of imagination. According to Octavia Butler in 1990, what we don't see, we assume can't be. What a destructive assumption. And that lack of vision is connected to the biggest lie of all, that we can't win. What better lie to tell us to get us to give up before we even step into the fight? History has shown us that if even 3.5% of the population gets involved in a nonviolent movement, that we can win. And the truth is that very few people benefit from this climate crisis, and the vast majority of people have everything to lose. The truth is that when people rise up and fight together, we can make all the changes necessary. It won't be easy, it won't be painless, it won't be perfect, but it is completely possible, and our lives and our futures depend on it, which is precisely why we have the Black Hive, which is precisely why we're bringing climate and environmental justice leaders together. We are the way out of no way people. Our power and our magic is needed in this movement and in this moment. Your power and participation is needed. I am telling you, my people, we are the vibranium. So take some time to read the Black Climate Mandate. Join the Black Hive. Find your spot in this incredibly hopeful, incredibly broad and powerful movement that we're building. Fight that disinformation. Black people are some of the original environmentalists. We have all the solutions we need to solve the climate crisis. It's not too late. And if we organize and fight, we can win. So run and tell that.